Those of you who might just be tuning in for this session, this is the Computer Assisted Language Learning Interest Section, or Call IS, Electronic Village Let's Learn Live events. Our next session will start in about 2 or 3 minutes here, and our presenter is going to be Heather Austin. I'm going to let Heather go ahead and screen share. I see you there, Heather, welcome. And let me stop sharing, and I will turn that over to Heather. And as she is getting set up, let me tell you a little bit about her session. Today, her presentation is using Padlet and breakout rooms to promote collaboration online, an award-winning example. And she is going to talk about Padlet as a digital tool that can promote collaborative learning online, and how combining them with breakout rooms, how she successfully used them in an ESP Career Development course during the pandemic in her teaching. And her session is going to demonstrate an activity that requires students to work together to answer job interview questions and talk about tips and associated 21st century skills that were used. So if she is all set, I will turn things over to Heather.
Sure, thanks so much. So let's just go ahead and dive in. Maybe in the chat box, everyone can write some of the challenges that you've experienced, during the pandemic with online teaching. So what challenges have you experienced in online teaching during the pandemic? Just share some of them in the chat box. Yeah. Ooh, the are you there feeling. Absolutely. Lack of motivation. Yeah. Getting students kind of moving. Yeah. No cameras, especially. Yeah. Lack of motivation, lack of connection. Absolutely. So I'm hoping that the lesson that I share today kind of addresses some of those things. For me, in my particular course, I was extremely worried about students being able to interact properly. With the particular course that I teach, students have to work together quite a bit in class, in pairs and groups. And so I was really worried about, collaboration online waning, student motivation waning. And so this is the lesson that I prepared to help kind of combat that. You can see here that, as promised in the title, this is an award-winning lesson. I did receive the first place prize for the Ron Chang Lee Award for Excellence in Classroom Technology using this lesson. So I just wanted to share what it is that I did, and hopefully it can perhaps inspire other lessons in the future. And the Ron Chang Lee Award for Excellence in Classroom Technology does feature the latest in call tech, maybe like an innovative use of technology. It's supposed to be engaging and unique, and a practical application. So that's really, I hope, going to be the benefit of this particular lesson that you may be able to apply in your own contexts. So the things I'm going to discuss today regarding the lesson are some of the background information of the course and what it is that I did, the goal of the lesson, how I approached it, pros and cons of the lessons, and then just a quick reflection. So the background information is this. I was working at a private university in Turkey at the undergraduate level, and it was a 4th-year ESP course. So this means my students were seniors. And it was an English for Career Development course. So this means that we talked about a lot of different things within the job application process, finding a job, advertisement, analyzing it, writing a CV, a cover letter, handling job offers and rejection, and especially attending a job interview. Now, this all happened, this lesson took place during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I was really, as I said, I was really unsure how to collaborate meaningfully online when everything moved online in the spring of 2020. So I decided to take a flipped classroom design when I was redoing when everything moved online and I had to essentially redo everything. And we were using the Blackboard LMS learning management system. So basically I pre-recorded the videos in which I was actually teaching the lesson content. That was the asynchronous component. And then the students came to the Blackboard Collaborate synchronous component, and we practiced and kind of reviewed everything that was in those videos. So the goal of the lesson that I did was to prepare students for the midterm exam. The midterm exam was a mock job interview. So I pretended to be the company. I was the job. I was the interviewer, and students came and were interviewed by me, essentially. And they were given 20 common interview questions, and you can see those there on the screen. And we had 4 weeks to prepare for the midterm exam. So in week 1, we went over interview types and stages, different types of questions. And then we also looked at the first 10 questions of the 20 common interview questions, looked at model answers and different strategies that could be used to approach these, especially because there were different question types. And in week 2, we went over the last 10 questions, model answer strategies. Week 3, we looked at how to answer questions about their CV, which they had created for themselves earlier in the course, body language, and professional attire. And then week 4 was purely practice. So what I did, the lesson that I'm going to discuss today was actually done in weeks 1 and 2, but I'm only going to show you, I'm just going to focus on what I did in week 1. And you can see here my approach. And also a snapshot of what the Padlet ended up looking like. So what I did for week 1, when they come to the synchronous session, we reviewed the content of the video very briefly, and then I gave them the instructions. So the first thing that they had to do was look at questions 1 through 10, which you can see on the previous slide here. And they needed to choose the question. These are the instructions that they were given. Choose the question that they think is the hardest and try to be honest, because of course you have some students that just choose the easiest one. And I told them to prepare their answer using the interview question strategies that we had discussed in the pre-recorded lesson videos and also in the review. And then they had to share their answers with a partner and give each other feedback according to those strategies. Then, according to the feedback they received, they needed to update their answer and then post it to Padlet, writing the question number, their name, and their name at the beginning of the post. And then what I think was maybe the best part of the lesson was that they were to come back later because I was going to give them feedback. So you can kind of see at the bottom of the posts here, you can see my name there. I provided feedback on the answer, but I also provided a star rating. And then, so I explained all of this to the students beforehand. I demonstrated Padlet. So I went to Padlet, showed them how to use it. And then I put them into pairs and put them into breakout rooms and sent them on their way. In week 2, it was the same thing with questions 11 through 20. And so what ended up happening is, if I can actually, I'll stop sharing very quickly. Just a moment. There we go. Okay, and I will share with you the actual final product. So you can see here, I'm just going to share my whole screen. Yeah, so here now you can see the actual final product. Padlet's really great because you're able to save it. So I saved it as a PDF, and you can see here, the entire Padlet. So this was something that, students were able to return to later, and you can see they had plenty of feedback that I gave to them, and they could also see their friends' responses and their friends' feedback. And so this was kind of the really nice thing about it. So if I go back to my presentation here, I'll talk about some of the pros of this lesson. So first of all, I was always present and engaged with them, which this research here shows is something that's necessary for optimizing collaborative learning online. So that was something that was really nice, especially when I was monitoring in the breakout rooms. I was providing feedback to them. I could see what they were doing on Padlet in real time. And according to Chandler, there are 3 benefits of breakout rooms, which I also experienced in my lesson. And the first one is it's just collaborative, collaborative learning and interaction. So the students were paired, they were working together, they had their microphones open, they were looking at their partners' responses, providing feedback. And it was also something that they were able to really partake in. So, I was not really I was not the center of that lesson. It was definitely not a teacher focused lesson. They were contributing to the content of that particular lesson. But also it was a break from, the more lecture style or PowerPoint based type of lessons that often online lessons turn into. So it was really, really nice. And it gave them a chance to work in real time. They felt more connected in their work. They felt more connected to each other, but also it involved a lot of feedback. So not only student feedback, but also teacher feedback, both immediate as I was monitoring in the breakout rooms and delayed when I gave them comments and star ratings. And Beltran Martin also mentions that Padlet is often well received by students, and it was in my classes as well. It's very easy to use. It also helps students to increase their team abilities and their motivation because they can see what they're doing. They can see what everyone else is doing. They're kind of on the stage. And it's also, in my opinion, for my particular course, one of the highlights of this particular lesson was the digital repository qualities of the lesson content. So in this situation, it was just a whole collection of example peer answers to job interview questions and teacher feedback that my students could refer to at any time. So they could come back later, they could come back in 2 weeks and use it as a study source for the exam. Now, for some of the cons, of course, nothing's ever perfect, is it? So, of course, there are some challenges during collaborative activities, as noted in this 2018 research. I did experience some of these challenges during the lesson. One of them is lack of students' collaboration skills in general, like giving very detailed explanations, asking for help, and also giving constructive criticism. Sometimes students, they take oh no, it's a good answer, it's good. They take that route, even though maybe there are some issues with that particular student's response. And so that student isn't really getting proper feedback. But this is something that's also experienced in face-to-face classes as well. Some type of free riding, if we could say. And so that's just when some students contribute more than others. Some are working a little bit harder. Some are giving real feedback, whereas their partner might not be as serious about the task. And then also friendships. I did have some students request to work together. Some of them really empowered each other and positively influenced each other, but others just kind of got distracted and started talking about, what they did at the weekend. So that is something that you kind of have to be aware of, your class. There were some students that were friends that I knew better and I didn't allow them to work together. I did try to pair the students strategically, stronger students with weaker students, quieter students with more active students, and that was beneficial. Also, some students didn't watch the pre-recorded lessons. So that's something that happens when you're taking flipped classroom approach. The students are responsible for watching the lesson content in their own time. And if they didn't do that, then they came to the session kind of with question marks. But, we did review things. So they were able to catch up pretty quickly. Also, I did have a generally monolingual class, so keeping them in English was difficult sometimes. But I'm not one of those people who thinks that the L1 should be banned. It is a tool. And so I didn't really mind when some students were going over particularly difficult concepts. And also just monitoring the breakout rooms. When I had larger groups, I had a lot of different rooms to monitor. So jumping around, that was kind of difficult. But, of course there's cons, but in general, the students really just enjoyed the social nature We were deep in COVID-19 isolation at that time, so it was really welcomed by the students, but it also kind of demonstrated the connection between the asynchronous and the synchronous components. So it really showed them, hey, this is what a flipped classroom is. This is why you need to watch those lesson videos and then come to class prepared. And so it was a very good demonstration of that. It was very meaningful. And it was a repository, but it was also, I think, something that would be beneficial for absent students. So students who weren't even in the lessons is still a resource that they are able to use, that is student made and with lots of feedback. And it really was the next best thing to face-to-face interaction. It just went so well, which was really, really great. So in terms of reflection, at that particular time, I do feel, during, oops, you've got a visitor here. I do think that at that particular time, the potential of the activity was not really realized because we had just gone online, and I was really trying to, deal with a lot of different things. It was kind of overshadowed by dealing with the expected and unexpected challenges of moving to online teaching, like within a week, including, the teacher training, trying to learn the LMS platform in detail, also trying to adapt the materials to online lessons, changing the entire curriculum to a flipped kind of design, and trying to learn all these different new technologies like Padlet and Mentimeter, and all of these things that the lovely previous presenter kind of talked about, and just educational technology in general, new technological issues that we were all dealing with. And so it was kind of difficult to, deal with the sudden constraints of working online, the new constraints presented by the pandemic. But I did collect lots of teacher and student feedback in the form of Google Form surveys. So at the end of the semester, near the end of the semester, I was the course coordinator. And so I was able to provide, get some feedback from the teachers who were teaching the course, as well as from the students. And I kind of tied up those loose ends for the following semesters. Even now, this is an activity that's being used. The course stayed online. The university decided that it really lent itself to online learning, so the course stayed online. And so this is a permanent activity that is done every semester. It's more structured now. The way that the instructions and everything are presented to the students is a little bit clearer. Teachers are now more familiar in general with online teaching, with the technology, so things just kind of flow a little bit better. But also the presentation of the activity, really highlighting. I mean, at the time, I wasn't really thinking about, oh yeah, this is going to be something that students can go back to and refer to in the future. It was kind of after the fact that I was like, wow, this is now a really great resource. So really highlighting the repository qualities to the students so that they, they're serious about it and that they help each other out, and it makes everything a lot more collective. It really was kind of like the next best thing to face-to-face. So I'm just going to go back now to the actual, and actually let me go ahead and share this link with you all, and that way you can kind of have a look and you can kind of see what I've done here, the type of feedback that was given. And that way you can kind of get a clearer idea. So here's the link to what's currently on the screen if you'd like to open it and have a look at it and get a better idea of what the final product ended up looking like. I'm also going to share with you an article that I wrote about this. So essentially, the entire presentation that I just shared with you, I published an article about it in a newsletter of a friend of mine, and it's all pretty well laid out. So if you wanted to refer to what I discussed earlier today, including some of the research articles that I used while preparing for, writing up what I did and the theoretical basis and methodology for the TESOL award, you can reference it there. So everything's all provided for you. So I kind of blew through it. I was a little bit nervous about only having 20 minutes to go over everything. But this is what I did for the award. So if anybody has any questions now, um, yeah, absolutely. No problem, Jamie. Yeah. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer. Have a look over everything. And if you have a few questions in a couple of minutes, I'm still here. So I hope that we can all understand now that meaningful online collaboration using breakout rooms and Padlet is definitely possible.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Heather. As was said in the chat there, we appreciate the clear organization to your presentation and your sharing both the newsletter article and access to the Padlet to get a view there of sort of more in depth of what you did with the students. While other people are thinking about their questions, I have two for you, if you don't mind. Super. The first one is, how did students react to the star rating that you gave them? Was there any sort of affective issues if they didn't receive a high star rating in a public setting within the class?
Yeah. Not really. I was anticipating that students would, I was anticipating that students would, kind of get a little bit competitive or, feel bad about the star ratings. But that didn't really happen. I think one of the reasons is because I am teaching university students. They were a little bit more mature. And they kind of were very self-aware. So they knew the effort that they were putting into their particular answer. You can see even in some of the answers that were given, if there's just a 2-star, I explain exactly why. So it was never personal. It was always very much backed up by the strategies and the what we discussed in class. So especially if students didn't watch the videos, and I always took a poll at the beginning to tell students, I had a poll, did you watch the videos, yes or no? And I always told them, I don't care if you watch the videos or not. I'm just collecting numbers here in order to understand if this is working. And I really wanted their honesty. They weren't going to get in trouble for not watching the videos. I just wanted to know the honest truth. And so they, I knew who was watching. I knew who wasn't watching. I knew who was aware of the strategies and who wasn't. I did also tell them that they kind of needed to prepare answers that were about 30 seconds to a minute long. So if, for example, Ege and Mert here on the very first page here, you see here, this is probably maybe 15 seconds of speech. So, I provided feedback, but also, explained very clearly what they need to do to improve. So it was not something that I feel negatively affected the students, but it did introduce a little level of competition, which was fun.
I can imagine. Thank you for that. And my other question had to do with preparation for giving peer feedback. Did you do any sort of training to make sure that the constructive at the peer-to-peer level, that the feedback at the peer-to-peer level would be constructive?
I didn't really do any explicit training. I told them to focus on, well, first of all, we looked at tons of model answers. So they kind of knew what was expected of them. And so they used that as kind of a guideline of what answers should look like, but also the strategies used to approach each question. So the question types, for example, questions, let's see if I look at the 20 common interview questions again, I can show you. So for example, questions 8, 9, and 10, those are behavioral questions. So students really need to give examples from their past. So real past examples. So for example, if a student was answering question 10, which is a 2-part question, and they wrote about how well they work under pressure, but didn't give an example, then students were able to really pinpoint that, like, hey, you forgot to give an example. And there was also a technique that they were supposed to use for that called the STAR technique, which kind of explains the setting the task that they had to do, the action that was required, and the result. So if they were missing parts of the STAR technique, they needed to point that out. So each question was really gone over in depth about what to expect. And so if those strategies were not used within those answers, then students were able to pinpoint that. The only downfall, as I said, is that if they didn't watch the videos, if they weren't paying attention in class, then there were kind of some question marks about what to do. And so then the feedback wasn't as constructive as it could have been. So that was, as I said, a drawback. But it wasn't frequent enough to not make the entire activity meaningful throughout all of my courses.
Super. All right. Well, thank you for that clarification. I'm looking at the chat to see if we have any additional questions coming in. Lots of very positive and supportive feedback. And for those of you who are asking about content from the session, the recordings of these sessions will be available on the Call IS YouTube channel, and I've listed that there for you in the chat. We are not going to be directly sharing slides from these presentations through the Call IS. It's up to each presenter if they would like to do that through some mechanism, and if they want to share their own contact information. But we will be sharing recordings. And in this case, as we saw, presenters have options to share resources such as Heather's did here with the newsletter information and the link to some of the materials that were incorporated in this activity. The chat, copying the chat is not an option, I do believe, at this point. I will double check the settings for Zoom. Let's see, we have one question coming in from Jamie. Have you worked with other posting tools in terms of audio, image, or video, so multimedia uses of Padlet with your students?
Absolutely. One particular Padlet activity that I'm really looking forward to in my upcoming semester is using it as like an icebreaker. So as you could see, I was trying to share the Padlet there because someone was asking what Padlet is. It's just an online platform that students can use to work collaboratively in real time, and it kind of works like a cork board, if you will. And so one of the icebreakers that I'm looking forward to doing is posting particular, there's a different layout that you can use, which kind of works as like a shelf. And so there's one particular topic that I post at the top, and then students can post underneath that. So one thing that I'm going to do is just give them maybe 5 different topics. So for example, the color purple, what you did in your summer holiday, delicious food. So those are like 3 examples. And then I'm going to share that with students, and then them in class using their cell phones and using the photos that they have on their phones, they're going to just go through their, they're going to go through their gallery and find something that goes towards that category. So the color purple, they're going to just go through their images on their phone and find something from the color purple and post it under that. And then for with what they did that summer, again, they post something that represents that. So at the end, all the students will have lots of different photos, and we'll be able to go through all of the photos of each student, ask questions about it, get to know each other a little bit more. And I think it's going to be something that's really nice, that is very personalized. And it's going to be something that will be engaging. Students will be using their phones, getting to know each other. So that's one of the activities, just one other activity that you can use using photos, for example, with Padlet. So students would be posting the photos in that case.
All right, that is a good example. So many ways, as Heather mentioned, and as Sandy, our previous presenter, mentioned, to really make these tech tools work for you. And we're really only limited by our creativity. One other question came in directly to me about where you found the videos that you used for this activity. Perhaps either the student videos or videos that you used in terms of preparation. Were those videos that you created?
Yes. So I created those videos. So I basically just stayed a week ahead of the students. Now, those videos are used, you know, in the following in the following semester. So they're still used, for example. So it's done. I don't have to do anything anymore. But at that particular time, when I first was implementing the flipped classroom design, I just stayed a week ahead of the students and I recorded those videos myself. So there was two pre-recorded videos, each of them a half hour. The course itself was a 3-hour course each week. So they would watch an hour, two videos for a total of an hour, and then we would have maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours to actually practice in class. So I used a tech tool called APowerSoft. So it's just a screen recording tool that doesn't have any limit. And so I prepared, basically what I was going to teach them in class. I just went through very, very quickly and recorded it myself. And so it was actually me on the screen teaching. And it was I actually shared those videos with all of the other courses. So teachers, weren't reinventing the wheel. And everything was kind of standardized in that way. Everyone was getting exactly the same lesson across all of the sections. So yeah, I did that myself. So it was a lot of work at first, but now it's a breeze.
Great, thank you for that response, Heather. And I see Anne had made a comment here in the chat saying, thinking about other applications of Padlet for the workplace, talking about aviation mechanics, perhaps, for maybe ESP working together. To discuss interpreting instructions. And that's definitely something you can do to set up in Padlet, have some sort of stimulus content, whether it, in this case, is your suggestion and something from the maintenance manual, and then let your students respond to that there in Padlet. So yes, definitely another application, in this case, ESP for Padlet. So thanks for sharing that there in the chat. We are getting close to the end of our time here today for this session. So thank you all for attending and for your participation and comments in the chat. Thank you, Heather, for this very well-prepared session. Encourage you all, and I'm going to share the link here in the chat, to please, if you have not, visit the Call IS YouTube channel, all right, to see recordings of this session and others. And I'm also popping a link here in the chat to the Electronic Village homepage, where you can find many other asynchronous, so on your own schedule, and live, like this one, learning opportunities that will be available to you for the duration of the conference, and many that will be available afterwards. So we are going to go ahead and close out here today. Thank you, Heather, and thank you, Sandy. Did you have one more thing you'd like to say, Heather?
Yes, there's a very wonderful website. I'm going to share it in the chat box there. It's actually a TESOL International Association blog post. And the idea of that, what I mentioned of posting the pictures and the topics and having the students post their pictures, I actually stole from that particular blog. So that blog post is in the link in the chat box, and I posted the link there. So if you guys want to see other ways to use Padlet as an icebreaker, then it was a really wonderful blog post. Thank you.
All right, we appreciate that resource. All right, so we'll go ahead and close out here today. We have more Let's Learn live sessions tomorrow during the conference, so please check the Electronic Village homepage to see when those are going to be available. But for now, thank you for attending, and we hope you have a great conference if you are participating in the main TESOL convention, or if you're just joining us in the Electronic Village. We look forward to continuing to learn with you for the next few days. So thanks, everyone.